Hi everybody. A while ago I did a video that I'll put at the end of this where I talked about general tips for collecting. It was really kind of for collecting anything. I mentioned video games, movies, it applies to books, manga, whatever. Just in a general sense, some general tips if you're really just getting into it or you live in an area where you have a lot of difficulty finding things. Because I live in one of those areas, not very far from Amish country. Finding things that are of any great technological or cultural value tends to be difficult at thrift stores around here, just mostly knickknacks and junk. But so that's why, kind of from my perspective, I wanted to give you some tips on how then have I been able to get into various forms of collecting. And this time I wanted to talk specifically though about LaserDiscs, just because it's something I'm very passionate about, and over the past year or so on this channel I have been doing a lot of LaserDisc videos. I try to, as much as I can, get out almost every week. On a Friday I'll put out a LaserDisc video with either pickups or talking about a movie I just watched, reviews, different talks about the format, whatever. I really try and do that very frequently, so I wanted to make one that's very specific to LaserDisc, and also because I know there are some people who are watching my channel who are new to LaserDisc or haven't really heard about the format and are curious about it, and some others I know are thinking about getting into collecting, and I was in that boat not that long ago because for the longest time I either wasn't allowed to have LaserDisc as a kid, couldn't have it just wasn't feasible moving around giant like LaserDisc player and stuff like that, and so I was really only able to actually physically get into collecting LaserDisc less than 2 years ago, so a pretty short span of time. So I really wanted to share what I've learned over that time, specifically for LaserDisc rather than just collecting in the general sense. The first step, and the thing that I think is the most important to figure out when you're just getting started, is do as much research as you can into what is actually on the LaserDisc format that you enjoy, and look into, research different players, look at different forms of movies that you like, and just really get a bit of a picture of what part of the LaserDisc library you are really interested in. Some people really collect LaserDisc only for music LDs, concerts and things like that, music videos. Some people are just on the music side. Other people get it more for foreign movies, whether you're looking at Italian horror, whether you're looking at stuff from Hong Kong, especially 80s Hong Kong, or you're looking for anime or movies or TV shows from Japan, or are you a big sci-fi collector? You collect stuff like the box sets of the X-Files and Star Trek and things like that, or are you just really a big 80s and 90s nut and you just want a bunch of 80s and 90s movies? I think it's important to try and figure out your little niche, your area of interest. Silent films. There's a lot of great silent films and stuff through early sound and into Technicolor era on LaserDisc, and that helps you kind of narrow down your focus, and when you start looking for stuff, helps you kind of have a guide and really make a target for yourself, because once you start getting into the community and talking to different people, everyone's going to have their own opinion, and there are a lot of opinionated people you'll find just online, watching videos, or even talking to people on Facebook. You're always going to come across people that think that watching something like LaserDisc their way is the only way to do it, and if you're doing it in a different way, it's wrong. And I'm here to tell you that there's no such thing as a wrong way to enjoy a hobby. It's a hobby. You're doing it for fun, for your fulfillment, your enjoyment, so do it how you want. So when you ask the question to people, what's a good LaserDisc player? You're going to get a lot of opinions, and some people will say that it's only this, or what's the best way to hook up a LaserDisc player? Should you put it through this into this, or should you just do a straight, to a CRT? Should you do it to this? There are many different options, and it's good to get that information, but don't take anyone's opinion as a law. Don't take anyone's opinion as this is the only way. That's why I say do the research and just take the time as you're getting into it to figure out what you want in the format, so as you're collecting you can ask questions that are a little more specific and geared towards what you're looking for, and people that are more knowledgeable and have been collecting longer can give you answers that you can actually use that will actually help you, rather than getting just a totally different opinions from everyone, asking about, I really like this type of movie, what's on this format that you recommend, or was this movie ever released on LaserDisc? Different questions like that. being a little more specific with what you're asking can actually give you a little more information. So that's a huge important step, is figuring out what you want in the format first. And a great way to do that is the LaserDisc database, and I'll put that up, a link on the bottom here, and I'll put that up here right now, just showing you a general picture. And this is good for things besides LaserDisc, but for LaserDisc it's probably the best thing you can find. And it's not 100% complete on everything, but it is an extensive database and gives you tons of information on discs released just about anywhere in the world. And it's fun to just browse and search through them through a quick search, or do an advanced search and use all the different categories to your advantage, and see what's on the format. And one thing I did was, if there's a movie that you want on the format, take a little bit of time again to figure out, okay, there's a ton of different releases of this movie. What is a good release? And researching different things. Research is a huge part, just figuring out again, what do you really want before you really start searching? Have at least a general idea of what you're searching for before you get into the process of actually building your collection. And I mention all this first too because once you actually do start getting into LaserDisc collecting and trying to find things, the way you're gathering this information is the same way you're going to be able to find great deals. When you are looking through and asking questions of people that are very knowledgeable, usually those are the people that you can sometimes get great deals from when you join different groups. I will mention stuff that I'm a part of. There are LaserDisc buy and sell groups that are only for that. The LaserDisc Forever group, which is incredibly entertaining and frequently juvenile, but it's also a great way to meet some people online and really to build up your collection as well. There are very frequently things going on there. And also on Facebook, another great way to look is The Good Squid, to import stuff from Japan very cheaply, slow boat shipping for large orders, that type of stuff. There are so many different ways when you make a lot of connections. That's the way you can get a lot of these retro types of media, aside from just finding them out in the wild, which is kind of dependent on where you live in many ways, how lucky you are just by your geography as far as what you're going to find out there. So frequently you really are, once you get to these things that have been out of print for a couple of decades, a lot of these discs now, you're not going to find them very easily depending where you are unless you use these online avenues. And a great way to do that is to participate, and don't be shy. Just go out there and talk to people, start getting into conversations and really get to know some of these people that are into this format, and they will be able to guide you in some ways to better ways to get great deals. You'll be able to see great deals as they come up. Just mention things that you're looking for. Sometimes someone will be like, "Oh yeah, I have another copy of that," and what are you willing to pay for it? That type of thing. Or they might throw out a $10 price tag on something that you've been seeing for $40 on eBay. You never know. So it's always good to seek people that are not necessarily just like-minded, but that are in the hobby, even if they like totally different things. And that can also be a great thing. If you are super into, say, like if you're super into movies from the 30s and 40s, and someone like Moiki gets like a huge bin of stuff like that, someone who hates stuff of that era and can't stand the accent or anything from that era, and maybe you have something that someone like that would be interested in, you can do a trade. So even if you find people that are interested in totally different things with LaserDisc, find one of those music collectors and they got a bunch of movies they don't want, and you have a bunch of music discs you don't want. Do a trade, that type of thing. There's so many different ways where you can get stuff cheap, or just straight trades, that kind of stuff. It really works. Building your network is one of the most important things for something like this, because so many people buy LaserDisc in huge lots, or they have connections to people who are getting rid of big collections, and they kind of spread the wealth. As far as going and specifically looking now for specific discs, trying to find them and purchase them online, there are a lot of different ways you can do that. And probably one of the most straightforward ones is avoid Amazon at all costs and eBay. There are some better options also, but I'll talk about eBay because it's the most common thing and it's very easy to go on. Sometimes you end up paying a little bit more, but it's very easy to go on eBay and find good discs. So I'll look up one here that I was looking for recently, Suspiria. And there's a bunch of different listings, and this is what I mean when you look through here, you see a whole bunch of different versions, and it's really nice when you're looking to be able to just have the LaserDisc database look for one that looks good and looks to be a decent price, and look it up and find out what these different versions are. That's why the LaserDisc database and also people that are knowledgeable that you can ask questions to, they're invaluable when it comes to things, because if you see a copy for a movie that's $20 and a different copy of the same movie is over $100, it's good to be able to tell, well, why is one $20? Why is one $100? Is the $100 one actually better? Because that's not always true. Sometimes it's just rare, or sometimes it is just import only versus the other one is domestic, and sometimes the cheaper one might even be the better option or just as good depending on what you want. So you look it up, you look up on the LaserDisc database, you get tons of different information. One of the most important things to look at when you're buying things on eBay is this rot probability and looking at it, and this is not always 100% accurate on everything, but it does give you a good general idea of, is this something that is more susceptible? Is it something that I'm going to have to look for? And even if it's not, you use these same precautions when you're going to look and buy on eBay. Look for a couple of things, not just the price and that type of thing. One thing to check, and especially if there is a chance that it is a disc that might have rot, if they don't mention anything about the disc being tested in the description, I really usually stick to a purchase where they actually show a picture of the disc itself if it's something that's not sealed, and if they don't have a description listed that the disc is tested, check to see if the seller has sold other LaserDiscs in the past. Actually look at the seller and see if are they selling a bunch right now. Do they seem to be someone who sells a lot of discs and will ship properly because there's a proper way to ship a LaserDisc, or are they someone who they just randomly found one at Goodwill in with a bunch of LPs and they'd never even seen one before, because then it might be shipped improperly, and that's a good thing to look at. And sometimes you do want to take a chance if you see something really cheap and the seller still has a good positive rating. But if you see something that's close in price and there's one seller that's never sold a LaserDisc before, and you have another seller that has 1,000 LaserDiscs they're selling at the same time, and they mention that they will do combined shipping or whatever, and they seem to be knowledgeable about what a LaserDisc is, for $1 or $2 more, you might even be better off getting that, or mention something to the seller nicely about whether or not was this disc tested. There is a certain way to ship LaserDiscs, and a good seller will listen to that and send it to you. Just don't be a jerk, but there are ways to kind of look and see, well, will I get this intact? And you should also definitely make sure, I would not purchase a LaserDisc where there is no return option. If the seller does not accept returns, and you click on a movie and you look at it and they don't seem to sell a lot of LaserDiscs, and it looks like it has a fairly high percentage, 20 or above in the LaserDisc database of being a rotter, you might not want to take a chance on something that doesn't have a return. It's just something where there are lots of little things where you really just want to play it safe in many ways, unless it's a shooting for the moon crazy deal. You really want to kind of be safe with what you're getting, and again, it's just about being knowledgeable and using the different tools, using people and stuff like the LaserDisc database to buy intelligently, to really know what you're getting into. And speaking about keeping yourself safe, when you are purchasing things through different venues other than eBay, when you are searching for stuff on different Facebook groups and things, always be careful. You can trust things like Maxine the Laser Queen, you can trust the Good Squid, you can trust certain people on the Lasers Forever. Like if you're active in that community, you start to kind of figure out, as people are posting things, hey, I got this from whoever this week, great shipping job. You start to be able to figure out who you can definitely trust to send you great stuff and who does not have such a good track record, or who is trying to bamboozle people with a sob story, and that's happened before too, and scam people. You want to be able to avoid that, and you can do that again through just being knowledgeable and being a little bit wary. And when you do those purchases too, through something like PayPal on Facebook, never, I can't express this enough, never, even if you trust this person, you watch their YouTube channel or something, and you follow them, you talk to them on a group, I don't care who it is, unless you are blood related to this individual, do not use friends and family on PayPal when you're going to purchase LaserDiscs through Facebook. Just don't do it, and if they insist on doing that, pass the deal by. It's not worth the chance and the hassle. Just again, it can be tempting sometimes with old retro media to be like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for this for 4 years, and I found it, if something seems a little shady or too good to be true, it might be. Just let it go. You'll find it again. Don't worry about it. You will find it again. Just, again, play it safe. So that's another way. So you have all these different Facebook groups. If you play it safe and get to know who you can trust and who you can't trust, or who you have to be a little bit wary about. Through eBay, again, the same thing. Look for little things. Be able to figure out, is this person knowledgeable? Have discs been tested? Do they know how to ship a disc? If you're looking for a copy of Air Force One, which is a very well-known rodder movie that I really enjoy, and you look and see, well, it's good to know before you go and spend $20 on a copy that the North American printing versus the Japanese one has the skull and crossbones on it, as far as like being a huge laser rot candidate there, versus a Japanese pressing, which might not be. It's good to be knowledgeable before you start spending your money, and always check and utilize these different resources. There are also different ways once you start building your collection and you get into importing a lot of Japanese discs, not just from something like eBay, where you're more than likely going to get price gouged if the stuff is actually coming from Japan, and not just through different Facebook groups and things. If you want to find another way to get things from Japan, to get things from Hong Kong, there are different tools that you can use. Something like the Japan Shopping Mall, or different sites. Look through different services where you can go to Japanese auction sites. Something like Yahoo Japan requires you to have a Japanese bank account to even bid in many cases, and there are services where you can pay a fee and they will actually do it for you. You'll basically be bidding on things on an auction site like that through them, and you're just paying a fee and it goes through to them, and then they ship it to you, and that type of deputy service. There are different ways to get into that, and that's also something that you can look at, because you do have to be careful though. You can look at it and you can find some incredible deals. There are a lot of Japanese things where even if you can get a lot of Japanese stuff through different individuals and through like the Good Squid and things like that, in many cases you can get stuff so cheap in Japan and to have it shipped over, but if you're buying through someone else, sometimes it's not as cheap as you want it to be, and eBay, forget about it. But if you go onto a Japanese auction site, you're like, wow, this thing I keep seeing for $200 is only like $20 on here when you convert it from yen, and even with shipping, it's still like a great deal. You can do that. Just make sure, again, you're careful and you look at fees, you look at what a deputy service charges, and shipping, and just look at all those different things. It's all about just playing it smart and playing the field and using all these things. And I mentioned all these different venues, and it's like, holy crap, there's so many different ways to go and so many parts you can put together. But when you really boil it down, it's just looking everywhere and finding what's reputable, what's not, knowing what to look for, and before you hit buy on anything or you bid on anything, knowing what you're bidding on, knowing what you're buying, and figuring out what you really want. And again, these tips apply largely to everything, but as far as it's different than with buying just like an English version of a game for the PS1. You kind of know that, okay, it's for this region, it's in English, whatever. For a LaserDisc, you might find that there's a much better version that's even cheaper, that's from Japan, and it's literally just completely in English with Japanese subtitles on the bottom of the screen. I mean, it's different with LaserDisc as far as stuff from different regions might actually be better versus something like video games. In many cases, not always, but in many cases, you're really, as far as the language barrier, sticking to your own region. With LaserDisc, you don't have to at all in many ways. And if you live in an NTSC region, if you live in the United States like I do, you can import pretty freely from Japan and Hong Kong and get a lot of American stuff that wasn't released here even from those regions. So with LaserDisc, it's all about looking too at things like is this a pan and scan? Is this letterbox? Like, what is the ratio, picture ratio on this? What kind of commentary does it come with? What kind of special features? Is there a better version? Does this have a high percentage of rot? There's so many different factors that it's really easy to just use a tool like the LaserDisc database to make an intelligent decision and figure out which version of a movie you want, not just what movies you want. So it just comes down to researching and figuring out what you want on the format, reaching out to people who know about the format, and just kind of having fun getting into conversations with these people and really letting others help guide you towards different things. using different reputable sources, figuring out what is a reputable way to buy certain things, and then when you go and do that, doing it responsibly, knowing to look for a seller that knows how to ship things, a seller that has checked discs to make sure they're in good condition, like they know what a LaserDisc is, making sure that you're covered as far as not using friends and family and things like that on PayPal, making sure there's a return policy on a disc that has a chance of being damaged or rotted on something like eBay, making sure you're double checking, are you really getting a good deal if you use something like a Japanese auction site, or are the fees and the shipping and everything going to build up to something that's actually a terrible deal? Just taking the time and being careful and not getting overly excited when you find something you've been looking for such a long time. And that's all the online avenues. And aside from that, it's just kind of searching at thrift stores and that type of thing. Always check if you have a thrift store that has tons of records and things like that. I always see at Goodwills around here, big boxes of records on the floor. Just about every LaserDisc I've ever found at a thrift store has been just mixed in with the records. So look around and in areas that you wouldn't necessarily expect to find them, because not everyone knows what they are, especially now as things are getting on in age. So really it's just about knowing what you want, the version of something that you want, and just being careful and just be smart. And you can eventually build collections. You can find stuff that is really cheap if you just take your time and look. It's the other thing, be patient. You can find stuff for cheap. A lot of common titles you'll find for under $5. Sometimes you can find lots that, for like 20 bucks you're getting, it breaks it down to $2 a piece sometimes. You never know what you're going to find on LaserDisc. And even something just recently, for including shipping, it was like less than $20, the entire Thin Man 6-movie box set collection. So there are LaserDiscs out there that are worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars. There's also a lot that's super cheap. A lot of times getting the LaserDisc version of something is even cheaper than getting a DVD copy. So just realizing that there's so much out there, there are thousands upon thousands of releases, you really don't have much of a barrier for importing, and just realizing your different options. LaserDisc is so much fun to collect for, and it can be very cheap to collect for. I mean, you can build up hundreds of discs without even realizing it, like, oh cow, what have I gotten myself into? But again, I know this is a long video, I'm just going to talking forever about this, but I absolutely love collecting for this format, and it's just so much fun, and it's just getting these points across of what to really do to help build up your LaserDisc collection. And if you're looking for really fun ways to figure out what's on LaserDisc aside from just sitting there and doing research and talking to people on different groups, it's fun to just watch people's pickups videos or collection videos and be like, holy cow, I didn't realize that was on LaserDisc. Or they might mention something where, I had this version in the past and it's terrible picture quality, but this version or this just different pressing, not even a totally different version, is much improved and that type of thing. And you can learn a lot just watching fun pickups videos. There are tons of people out there. I mean, obviously my own channel, Culture Dog, Sam Hatch is another one, Laser Blue Junkie. There's a whole bunch out there. A lot of people have a channel that's dedicated to LaserDisc pickup videos and that type of stuff, and they can be a lot of fun. They can really help you build a lot of knowledge just kind of casually as you're doing other stuff. Have some of these videos on in the background. It's a great way of having a fun time learning about LaserDisc. Never make collecting a chore or a contest with anyone else. Just have fun with it and build stuff over time, and just enjoy things as you go and enjoy what you have and what you're getting, and instead of always pining over what you don't have yet. Just have fun, look for great deals, be smart. Again, knowledge and as far as collecting is the most important aspect for saving yourself time and money and aggravation.